The secret I kept until now ends today, about whom I love. The weight of secrecy had become unbearable. I had carried it for too long, hiding behind carefully chosen words, avoiding conversations that threatened to expose what I wasn't ready to say. But today that changed. Today I was done pretending. The living room was filled with the familiar scent of my mother's cooking, but for once it did nothing to calm me. My father sat in his usual chair, reading the newspaper, while my mother hummed a tune as she set the table. My younger sister scrolled through her phone, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I stood near the entrance, gripping my hands together. My heart pounded as I cleared my throat. I need to tell you all something. They looked up in unison. My mother smiled warmly, my sister raised an eyebrow, and my father simply folded his newspaper, giving me his full attention. It's about someone I love, I continued, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. My mother's smile widened. Oh, finally you're bringing someone home. I nodded, but before I could continue, my father spoke. Is this why you've been distant lately? He asked. Because of this person. I hesitated before answering. Yes. Silence stretched between us. My mother's expression softened, while my sister finally put her phone down, interested now. Why would that make you distant? My sister asked. Are they someone we wouldn't approve of? That was the question, wasn't it? Would they approve? Would they understand? I swallowed hard before finally saying it. I love someone, and I've kept it a secret because I wasn't sure how you'd react. My mother stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. Why would you think we wouldn't support you? I exhaled, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Because it's different. Because it's not what you expected. Because I was afraid. The room fell into silence again, heavier this time. My father leaned forward, his face unreadable. Different how? I took a deep breath and finally spoke the truth. Their reactions weren't immediate. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a chair. My father's lips pressed into a thin line, his gaze fixed on me. My sister, surprisingly, was the first to break the silence. So, if you love them, why does it matter? She said, crossing her arms. I blinked, taken aback. You don't care, she scoffed. Why would I? It's your life. My mother exhaled slowly, nodding. I wasn't expecting this. I felt my throat tighten. Does that mean you don't accept it? She shook her head quickly. No. It's just when you've imagined something one way for so long, it takes a moment to adjust. But that doesn't mean we love you any less. I turned to my father, the one whose reaction I feared the most. His expression was stern, but his voice was calm. Does this person make you happy? I nodded without hesitation. He let out a breath. Then that's all that should matter. The tension in my chest released all at once. I had spent so much time fearing the worst, convincing myself that this conversation would end in disaster. But here I was, standing in front of my family, accepted. Thank you, I whispered, barely able to believe it. My mother walked over and pulled me into a hug. You never have to hide from us again. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Days passed since that conversation. Yet the weight in my chest had not completely lifted. Relief had settled in. But so had anxiety and uneasiness about what came next. Saying the truth aloud had been one battle. But what would happen when my family actually met the person I loved? I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through messages, hesitating before typing out my next words. They know now, it's time. The response was immediate. Are you sure? I don't want to make things harder for you. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. I had expected that reaction. They need to meet you, not just hear about you. After a long pause, the response finally came. Okay, let's do this. The weight of reality sank deeper. This was happening. The day of the meeting arrived faster than I anticipated. My family sat in the living room trying to appear casual, but the nervous energy was thick in the air. My mother smoothed her dress repeatedly, my sister kept glancing at the clock, and my father, as usual, remained silent. When the doorbell rang, my pulse quickened. I stood up, taking a deep breath. Before opening the door, there they stood, hands clasped together, anxiety mirroring my own. "Come in," I said softly. As they stepped inside, my mother was the first to move. She offered a nervous but warm smile, reaching out a hand. "It's nice to finally meet you." The response was polite, careful. My father stood slowly, eyes analyzing every detail, his expression unreadable. "Welcome," he said simply. The tension in the room was thick, and I felt every second of it. My heart pounded as my sister finally broke the silence. "You're not what I expected," she said bluntly. There was a small, uncertain laugh before the answer came. "I get that a lot." Despite the awkwardness, I noticed something shift. My mother's shoulders relaxed slightly. My father's gaze softened just a fraction. This wasn't hostility, it was hesitation, uncertainty. But that was something we could work through. The conversation started slow, cautious. My family asked questions, and each response was measured, careful, yet honest. And then at some point, something changed. Laughter broke through. My mother smiled. My father nodded in approval at something that was said, and my sister, well, she still had questions, but I could tell she was warming up. By the end of the evening, my father finally said something that made my heart stop. "You're good for them. That's all that matters." The tension I had carried for so long finally faded. The battle wasn't over, but it was a start. That night, as I walked my love to the door, their eyes were filled with something I hadn't seen before. "Hope, that wasn't as bad as I thought," they murmured. I smiled, squeezing their hand. "I told you it'd be okay." For the first time in a long time, I truly believed it. The night air was crisp as we stepped outside, the weight of the evening still lingering in my chest. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, watching as they shifted nervously beside me. "I think your mom likes me," they said, a small hopeful smile tugging at the corner of their lips. I chuckled softly. "She does. She's just trying to process everything." "My dad, though," I trailed off, unsure of how to explain him. "I don't think he dislikes me. He's just reserved," they replied. That was putting it lightly. My father was a man of few words, his silence often more intimidating than anything he could have said. But the fact that he had acknowledged them at all, that he had accepted their presence, was more than I had dared hope for. "Are you scared?" they asked suddenly, searching my face. I exhaled slowly, considering the question. Was I scared? Of course I was. I was terrified. But not because I doubted us. No, my fear was rooted in everything outside of us, in the judgment, the whispers, the expectations we had shattered by simply choosing each other. "A little," I admitted, squeezing their hand. "But I don't care what anyone thinks. I just want you." Their eyes softened, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. "Then we'll face it together," they whispered. I leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to their forehead, sealing the promise between us. As I watched them drive away, my mind raced with everything that had happened tonight. My family had met the person I loved, and while it hadn't been easy, it had been real. When I stepped back inside, my father was still in the living room, staring at the empty space where they had sat just moments ago. I hesitated before speaking. "So, what do you think?" He took a long pause before answering. "They're different," he said finally. I tensed. "Yea," and my father sighed, rubbing his hands together. "Different isn't bad, it's just not what I expected." That was the closest thing to approval I'd get from him, for now. And for now, it was enough. The conversation with my father had left me with a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. His words weren't disapproving, but they weren't exactly an embrace either. He was trying in his own way, and I had to believe that in time he would come around. As I made my way up to my room, my sister was waiting for me in the hallway, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. "You're overthinking it," she said, before I could even open my mouth. I raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" She nodded. "Dad's just old-fashioned. But if he really had a problem, you'd know by now. The fact that he's thinking about it means he's willing to adjust." I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "I just want things to be normal," she scoffed. "Nothing about love is ever normal. If it was, it wouldn't be worth fighting for." I blinked at her, surprised by the unexpected wisdom in her words. "When did you become the smart one?" She smirked. "I've always been the smart one. You're just too caught up in your own drama to notice." For the first time all night, I laughed. Really laughed. It was a small moment, but it helped. The days that followed were filled with small but noticeable shifts. My mother started asking little questions, things she never would have before: what their favorite food was, what kind of music they liked. My sister, in her own blunt way, had already decided she liked them and wasn't afraid to say so. But my father remained an enigma. He wasn't cold, but he wasn't warm either. He was watching, waiting, thinking, and that was somehow worse than an outright rejection. One evening, as I was passing by the living room, he called out to me, "Come sit." I hesitated for a moment, before walking over and sinking into the chair across from him. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice slow and measured. "Here it comes. I may not fully understand this yet, but I do understand one thing: you care about them. A lot." I swallowed hard, nodding. "I do." He exhaled, looking away for a moment, before returning his gaze to mine. "That means something to me. I don't have to understand it completely right now, but I won't stand in your way." Relief hit me like a wave. It wasn't a declaration of love and acceptance, but it was something. It was enough. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corner of his lips. And in that moment, I knew we would be okay.